Let's validate a form using JavaScript. Looking at the form on my screen, what do you think is going to happen if I click on the submit button? Well, we're about to find out. There's only one thing that is going to happen when I click the submit button. So either it gets submitted or it gives me an error alert. Let's find out. You can see name must be filled out. This is an alert that I did not actually enter any valid value into the feed, and that is the reason why this alert is popping up for me. We will do this together in 5 steps, and we are going to be going through the code together. The first step is a user submits the form, which is going to trigger an event that we have in the code. The number 2 step is that the JavaScript function in the code is called. Step 3 is to select and get input value. The step 4 is to check the condition, the logic that is inputted into the code in order to check if a requirement is met. And the last step is to show error and stop submission if there's an error in the inputs. Let's build the form and add the logic for validation. So the first thing we are going to do is to add the form that we want to validate itself. Here is my boilerplate code, and I added about 2 comments to know exact part where we are going to do what we need to do. The first part is where to add the form, and the second part is the JavaScript part where we are going to add the logic for validation. So let's get started. So I'm going to make a simple form. And how do you make a form? Use the form elements. Then I want this form to have a name, and I'm going to call this my form. I also want that form to have an action for where I want it to be processed. But in this case, since we are not working on the server side, I will leave it empty for now because we are not processing it anyway. We just want to demonstrate how an empty form can trigger an error when we try to submit it through validation. Then I will add a property that will take the method called onSubmit. Now, when I submit this, what do I want? I want it to return the logic that I will be making inside my JavaScript. So I want it to return this. Now, I also want to add method. What method should this form take when it is being used in my code? I want it to follow a post method, which means I want it to make a post request, a send request to wherever I have indicated inside this action form to be the part where to be processed. So I want a post method for my form. Then I close the form. Now, I now want to make a label, and that label is going to have a name and the form itself. So this is going to be the form feed. So I want to type, what do I want to be typed inside that form? I want text. And then what is the name for the form? What is the name that I want to be typed inside that form feed? I want first name. Then under it again, I can add another input type, which is going to be the submit that will click after the form. And its value will be submit. Now, so you can see what I have here. This is my form feed, which corresponds to what I have here. And this is my input type, which corresponds to the submit button that I have at the end of the form. I can even make it better by adding an ID to it. And then the button, the button should be much more bigger and more cleaner as it is now. So now that we have our form here, Then let's go inside the JavaScript to add the logic for validation to see if an empty response is given inside this form field. It should trigger an error for us. So let's make a function. And don't forget, we already have the function here, which is validate form. So validate form. Now, inside the function, I want to add a variable. I'll call it x, and inside this variable, I will store the values from the form field inside it. As you can see, so this is the form, which is what I'm referencing here, and the value that I expect inside the form, which is this first name. And then this value, a property that will help me to extract the value, whatever value is typed inside this form field. Now, then I can add a conditional statement that if the value of this variable is an empty string, then I want to see an alert and tell me that name must be filled out. If there's an alert that there is an empty string inside the form field, then it should return false, which means it should stop the execution of that process. It should stop the submission of the process as long as the value inside the form field is empty. And then I can close my if statement. And now that I have this, then I can finally close my function. And now, if you look at what we have here, here is a label, here is a form field and a submit button. So, because we are not working on server side here, we are only just going to show how this form will react if we try to fill it with an empty value. Are we truly going to get the alert message that we put inside our if conditional or not? Let's find out. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this submit button to see what will happen. But before I do that, I quickly want to point out that if this form field is empty, the function that we have inside the JavaScript, it will alert this message that we have here, and it will return false to prevent the form from being submitted. So with this explanation, what do you think is going to happen if I click on this submit button? Let's find out. Now you can see name must be filled out, which actually corresponds with what we have inside our if conditional statement. So this is how you can use JavaScript to prevent empty value submission in your HTML form. Key takeaways from this lesson are: number one, JavaScript can validate user inputs before form submission. And the second thing is that the onSubmit event is used to trigger validation, just as we use the onSubmit event inside our JavaScript logic in order to validate if a value is being entered into the field or not that we have in the form.